My mom's boyfriend tried to sabotage my apprenticeship because his son was jealous, so I walked away. Now they want back in, and what I showed them left them speechless. My name is Tyler. I'm 22 years old, and I live in Dayton, Ohio. If I had to pick a single word to describe my childhood, it would be inspired. My dad, Aaron, was an aerospace mechanic, the kind of man who could take apart an old propeller engine and put it back together by breakfast. From the time I could walk, I was his shadow in the garage, always handing him wrenches or picking up the small screws he'd accidentally drop. Dad was the type who believed that every lesson was better learned with your hands. Saturdays were our time. He'd buy model plane kits, some simple, some so complicated they had more parts than the old Civic we drove around town. We'd spread them across the workbench, him guiding my fingers through every bolt and rivet like it was the most important thing in the world. My mom, Rachel, worked from home as a freelance editor. Most nights, I'd find her at the kitchen table, red pen in hand, fixing someone's article or essay. She'd pause every now and then to smile at me or Dad, sharing quiet jokes across the room. When Dad wanted a break, we'd all crowd around the TV and watch those grainy documentaries about World War II fighter planes or the early days of NASA. Mom didn't know the difference between a fuselage and a stabilizer, but she'd laugh and ask questions anyway, just to keep us talking. Back then, our house was always warm, even when it was freezing outside. I'd come home from school to the smell of sawdust and oil in the garage, or the clacking of Mom's keyboard as she worked. Every so often, Dad would come in from the cold, grease on his hands, and press a kiss to Mom's cheek. She'd pretend to be annoyed, swatting him away with her red pen, but they'd both end up grinning. Dad didn't just teach me how to build models. He taught me to see the beauty in them. He'd say, "Look at this wing, Ty. See how it curves? That's what keeps it steady in a crosswind." I'd nod, pretending I understood, but inside, I was hooked. I wanted to know everything he knew. One Saturday, I remember him saying, "If you can build it small, Ty, you can build it big. It's all the same principles." I held on to that like a secret handshake. When I was 16, Dad had a heart attack in the middle of the night. It wasn't a dramatic collapse. He just didn't wake up. The doctors said it was a rare genetic thing, something no one could have seen coming. One day he was there, showing me how to align the landing gear on a model kit. The next, he was gone. I felt like I'd lost the only map I had. Mom and I clung to each other. She kept working, kept reading my essays, but the house felt different, quieter, colder. Dad had always talked about leaving a legacy, about making sure I'd have the tools to build something bigger than either of us. Turns out, he'd meant that literally. A week after his funeral, Mom handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a letter from Dad and a check. He'd been saving up every extra hour he worked, every little job on the weekends. He called it the apprenticeship fund, and he wanted me to use it to find my own place in the skies. The letter said, "When you get that apprenticeship, Ty, because I know you will, I want you to open this and remember that this was always the plan." The envelope smelled faintly of motor oil and cologne, and for a second, I swear I could almost hear his voice. I promised him, right then and there, that I'd make it happen. I'd honor the work we did together in that garage. I'd protect Mom, keep our little world together. And I'd take every lesson he ever taught me, every bit of passion for flight, and build something that would make him proud. From that day on, I poured everything I had into mechanical design. My nights were spent hunched over blueprints or tinkering with scrap parts from the junkyard. I signed up for every engineering competition at school, every mentorship program, determined to turn that promise into something real. That was about 5 years ago. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can still hear the soft click of Dad's tools in the garage, and I still see that letter, waiting for the day I'd finally be ready to open it. 3 years had passed since Dad's funeral. Mom and I had carved out a new routine, clinging to the habits that kept us feeling close to him. We'd watch documentaries on rainy nights and spend weekends fixing up old model kits I found at yard sales. I thought it would stay that way forever. Then she met Vincent. I remember the first time she brought him home. He strolled through the door like he owned the place, wearing a shiny sports coat and grinning like some game show host. "Tyler, right?" he said, extending his hand. His grip was too tight, like he was trying to prove something. "Vincent's an entrepreneur," Mom said, practically beaming. "He runs his own business. Used furniture consignment." Vincent corrected, like it was some fancy title. He said it with a smug smile, like he'd just explained he was the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. "It's all about flipping what people throw away. You'd be surprised how much money's in that." I tried to be polite, but his words felt hollow, like a sales pitch. It wasn't long before Vincent was over all the time, helping himself to Dad's recliner and talking like he'd been here forever. A few months later, he moved in, and he didn't come alone. Trevor, Vincent's son, he was 2 years older than me, and it showed in the worst ways. He'd saunter around the house like it was his, slamming the fridge door just to hear it echo, or parking himself in the garage, Dad's garage, like he was the new foreman. I tried to ignore him, but he made it impossible. "You still playing with those toy planes?" he said one evening, leaning against the doorway with a smirk. "Thought you'd have grown out of that by now." I didn't answer. I was busy sketching a design for a competition at school, trying to drown out the chaos. Trevor just laughed. "You know, Real men don't waste their time on that school crap, he said. Real men hustle. It got worse after they officially moved in. Vincent took to calling me college boy in this mocking tone, like ambition was a joke. You're too wrapped up in those books, kid, he'd say at dinner, shoveling cheap takeout onto his plate. What you need is to get out there and learn how the world really works. I'd catch Mom laughing at his stories about flipping secondhand furniture and networking, like she was seeing the world through his eyes. But I saw something else. The way his chain of stores was always just about to turn a corner, yet never did. The way Trevor talked about me like I was some loser roommate who just wouldn't move out. One night, Trevor came down wearing Dad's flight jacket, the one Dad wore on Sundays when we'd go flying toy planes at the park. It had grease stains on the sleeves, but I loved that jacket like it was a piece of Dad himself. Seeing Trevor swagger into the kitchen wearing it like a costume, it was like someone punched me in the gut. What are you doing with that? I asked, my voice flat. Trevor just laughed, stretching his arms out dramatically. Chill out, college boy. It's just a jacket. Mom didn't say a word. She just looked away, like it didn't matter. After that, I stopped expecting her to stand up for me. She was different around Vincent, laughing at his corny jokes, repeating his half-baked business mantras. One night, I overheard her telling him, Tyler's just too stuck in the past. He needs to see there's more to life than old memories. Old memories. Like Dad was some dusty book on a shelf she didn't want to read anymore. I kept my mouth shut, even as Vincent started hinting about the apprenticeship fund. That money would be better off invested in something real, he said, swirling cheap wine in a glass he'd brought from the shop. A business expansion, real returns, real future. Isn't that what your dad would have wanted? I clenched my jaw, refusing to answer. My father hadn't worked overtime and saved every last dime just so Vincent could pour it into a failing store. I knew that, but it didn't seem like anyone else did. Trevor never missed a chance to get in a dig, either. All this school crap, he'd say, flipping through my textbooks like they were worthless. Pathetic, man. You're never gonna make it if you keep living in La La Land. But I didn't care what Trevor thought. I had a promise to keep, even if it felt like the walls of my home were closing in, brick by brick. I spent those nights replaying Dad's words in my head. If you can build it small, Ty, you can build it big. I was going to prove him right, even if the new family under my roof was doing everything they could to tear it down. I started spending more time at the school shop, sometimes arriving before the sun was up and staying until the janitors flipped the lights off. It wasn't just about the machines and the smell of fresh-cut wood. It was about finding a place where I still felt like myself. In the corners of that shop, surrounded by tools and scraps, I could still hear my dad's voice, steady and sure. At home, things only got worse. Trevor's constant sneers, Vincent's endless lectures about real-world hustling. It all blurred together, a steady hum of negativity I learned to tune out. I started treating home like a rest stop. In and out, head down, no arguments. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crack. After school, I'd head straight to the shop. There was an old prop plane model I'd been working on, more complex than anything I'd tried before. My mentor, Mr. Gallagher, was a retired Air Force engineer who ran the club like a military operation. He noticed how I clung to the project like it was the only thing holding me up. You've got a real knack for this, Tyler, he said one afternoon, nodding at the wings I'd painstakingly shaped from balsa wood. You ever think about entering the national competition this year? Your dad would be proud. My chest tightened at those words. Yeah, I said quietly. I've been thinking about it. In those late nights at the shop, I felt like I was part of something bigger than my messed-up home life. I was chasing the dream Dad planted in me, piece by piece, even if I couldn't tell anyone about it. At home, Vincent started talking more and more about my father's fund. It's just sitting there, Ty, he said one night, leaning back in Dad's chair like he'd earned it. You know what I could do with that money? We could buy out the consignment place across town, double our market share. I pretended to be too busy with homework to answer. Inside, I was screaming. Trevor didn't let up, either. He'd swagger around, picking at my plans. What's the point of all this? He said, tapping one of my sketches with a greasy finger. No one cares about stupid model planes. That's kid stuff. I didn't argue. I just turned the page in my notebook and kept drawing. When it came time for the SAT equivalent entrance test, I locked myself in my room for weeks. I didn't have the money for a fancy prep course. I didn't need it. I had Dad's old manuals and a stubborn streak that wouldn't quit. I aced that test. My mentor found out before my mom did. I knew you'd crush it, he said, clapping me on the back. Let's get you some scholarship applications, huh? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I hadn't told Mom yet. She was too busy laughing at Vincent's half-baked expansion plans, talking about new paint colors for stores that hadn't even opened yet. I'd see them in the living room, heads bent together over Vincent's tablet as he showed her charts and figures that never added up. We're building a future, honey, he'd say, like he was auditioning for a commercial. Meanwhile, I was building mine in secret. Every small victory, an award from a local competition, a glowing recommendation from Mr. Gallagher, felt like a spark of light in the dark. But I kept it all to myself. I didn't want Vincent sniffing around my dreams, trying to twist them into some hustle he could profit from. And I didn't want to see that look on Mom's face again, the one that said she believed him over me. Late at night, I'd lie in bed, turning Dad's letter over in my hands, still unopened. I'd read the name on the envelope and promise him, quietly, that I was almost there. I just had to get out of that house first. Trevor's snide comments, Vincent's lectures, Mom's blind laughter. I could take all of it. As long as I had my blueprints and my plans, I could keep going. I could keep building. I just had to stay quiet long enough to break free. I'll never forget the morning the email came. I was hunched over my laptop in the school shop, hands still greasy from adjusting the motor on my latest model, when my phone buzzed. It was from the aerospace engineering firm I'd been dreaming about since I was 15. My fingers shook as I read the words. "We're pleased to offer you a top-tier apprenticeship." My heart was hammering in my chest. I read it again, just to be sure it was real. I wanted to tell Dad, but of course, he wasn't there. So I just closed my eyes and whispered, "We did it, Dad." I could almost hear him say, "Proud of you, kid." I went home early that day, my mind buzzing with plans and possibilities. Mom was in the kitchen when I walked in, humming to herself as she cleaned up breakfast dishes. She looked up, startled when she saw my face. "Tyler? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," I said, grinning like an idiot. "I got it, Mom. I got the apprenticeship. They want me." For a second, she looked like she might cry. Then she let out a shaky laugh and hugged me tight. "Oh, honey, that's amazing," she said, her voice muffled against my shoulder. "Your dad would be so proud." "I know," I said, blinking back tears. That night, we decided to celebrate the way we always did when things were good, pizza and old aviation documentaries. We laughed like we hadn't in years, talking about the future like it was something we could finally reach out and grab. For a moment, it felt like we were back in those days when Dad would clap me on the back after a garage project and say, "You're going to take this further than I ever could." It was the first time in a long time I let myself feel that hopeful, but I should have known it wouldn't last. Vincent and Trevor came home just as we were finishing the last slices of pizza. Trevor didn't even bother with a greeting. He just flopped down on the couch, a smug grin on his face. Vincent followed, his eyes immediately flicking to the empty pizza box and the small stack of papers I'd left on the table. "What's all this?" he asked, voice smooth as ever. I swallowed. "I got an apprenticeship offer," I said, trying to sound casual. "It's the one I told you about. Dad's fund is finally going to be used for what he wanted." There was a beat of silence. Then Vincent let out a low whistle. "Top tier, huh?" He looked at Mom. "That's going to cost a pretty penny." Mom shifted uncomfortably. "We have the fund," she said quietly. "It's what Aaron saved it for." Vincent's smile didn't reach his eyes. Sure, he said, tapping his fingers on the back of the couch. "But think about this. That money could really help the business right now. We're close to buying out the warehouse across town. That's real growth, real stability for all of us." Trevor snorted from his place on the couch. "Yeah, man, you're not going to get rich building toy planes." I felt my face go hot, but I forced myself to stay calm. "It's not about getting rich," I said evenly. "It's about finishing what Dad and I started." Vincent leaned back, his expression turning serious. "Tyler, you're young. You've got plenty of time to chase dreams. But this is about family, about building something real, something that can take care of all of us." Mom looked like she was caught in the middle of a storm, her eyes darting between us. "Vincent, it's his father's money," she said softly. "It's not fair to ask him to give it up." Vincent's jaw tightened, but he forced a smile. Of course. I'm just saying, maybe there's another way to look at this." Later that night, I found Mom sitting in her room, her eyes red. She wouldn't meet my gaze. "He wants to use the fund," she said finally, her voice trembling, "to buy out the competitor's warehouse. He says it's the only way to keep the business from going under." I sat down beside her, feeling like the world was tilting under my feet. "Mom, you know what Dad wanted. He didn't work all those extra hours so Vincent could have another chance at a failing store." She wiped at her eyes, looking so small in that moment. "I know," she whispered, "but what if he's right? What if it's the only way to keep us together?" I took her hand. "Mom, I promised Dad I'd see this through. I'm not going to let him down now." She looked at me for a long time, and I could see the war in her eyes. Then she nodded, just once. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay." I left her there, feeling like I just won a battle I hadn't wanted to fight. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Vincent and Trevor weren't the kind of people to let go of something once they had their sights set on it. I lay in bed that night, the acceptance letter clutched in my hand like a lifeline. I knew they'd come after me. But I also knew this was my future, and I was done letting them steal pieces of it away. A week later, Vincent decided to make it official. He called it a family meeting, like he was some corporate CEO laying out his big vision. He set it up in the living room, with the couch pushed back and his laptop balanced on a stack of old catalogs. Mom sat on the edge of the couch, hands ringing in her lap. Trevor sprawled in the corner, arms crossed and smirking like he already knew how this would end. Vincent launched into his pitch with a slick grin. "Look, Ty," he said, clicking through a bunch of slides full of buzzwords and half-baked charts. "I know you're excited about this apprenticeship. I really do. But this fund, it's more than just for you. It's a legacy fund, and what better legacy than to secure the family's future?" He showed projections that didn't mean anything to me, lines going up, numbers highlighted in bright green. "If we put the money into expanding my chain, we're not just talking about making rent. We're talking about real money, real independence." Mom's eyes were shiny, caught between hope and dread. "Vincent," she started, But he cut her off with that fake polite tone he always used when he was feeling cornered. I'm just saying, Rachel, we need to think bigger. He turned back to me. Your dad worked hard, sure, but he was stuck in a small mindset. You don't have to be. You can take that money and turn it into something that takes care of all of us. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to sit up straighter. That's not what it's for, I said quietly. It's for the apprenticeship. It's what Dad wanted. Trevor let out a low laugh. Oh, here we go, he drawled. Little Tyler playing hero for his dead dad's dreams. I shot him a glare. Shut up, Trevor. Vincent raised a hand like he was calling a truce. Hey, let's keep this civil. Tyler, I get it. You're attached to this idea, but we're talking about real life. The apprenticeship is just school stuff. This is real. I took a slow breath, feeling the heat in my chest. It's real to me, I said. It's what I've been working for since I was a kid. It's the promise I made to my dad. Mom reached out to touch my hand. Please, Ty, she whispered. I don't want to lose the house. I don't want to see everything fall apart. For a second, I wavered. Seeing her like that, caught in Vincent's net, it almost broke me. But then I remembered the letter, still unopened, and the way Dad's hands had guided mine on every model we built together. I stood up, my voice shaking. I'm not giving you the fund, I said. You're not taking it. Vincent's face darkened. You're making a big mistake, he said, voice low and cold. You think you're some kind of savior? You're a kid playing with scraps. This is the real world. You need to grow up. I turned and walked to my room, pulling out the manila folder I'd been putting together. Public filings, news clippings about the consignment stores, even complaints from former employees. I'd spent weeks digging it all up, trying to see the truth for myself. I walked back in and dropped the folder on the coffee table. Here, I said, read it. You're not a businessman, Vincent. You're a con artist with a dying store and a bunch of lies. Trevor jumped up, face red. You little, don't, I snapped. Just don't. Mom looked at the folder like it was radioactive. She opened it slowly, her fingers trembling. Page after page of evidence. Vincent's face went pale, but he tried to recover. This doesn't prove anything, he said, voice tight. You're just scared to take a risk. No, I said, my voice steady now. I'm not scared. I'm done. Done letting you twist my dad's memory to make yourself feel big. Trevor lunged forward, but I stepped back, ready for him. Try it, I said, fist clenched. See what happens. Mom broke down then, her face crumpling. Please, she sobbed. Please, can't we just stay together? We're supposed to be a family. I felt my throat tighten, but I kept my eyes on Vincent. Family doesn't steal, I said. Family doesn't lie. I reached for the envelope, Dad's letter. My hand shook as I finally opened it. The paper soft and worn from all the times I'd held it without daring to look. His words spilled out like a lifeline. Tyler, if you're reading this, it means you're ready. This money is yours, and yours alone. Build something you can be proud of, and don't let anyone take that from you. I read it out loud, every word ringing through the silence like a bell. When I was done, I looked up at Mom. I'm sorry, I said softly, but I have to do this. She looked at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. I understand, she said. But then she turned to Vincent and said the words that broke me a little more. Maybe he can take a gap year, just to help us out, just for a while. I felt something inside me harden. No, I said quietly. I'm done here. I walked to my room and started packing my essentials. My ID, my dad's jacket, the letter. I didn't slam the door, didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I'd already made the choice. Vincent's voice followed me as I left. You're throwing your life away, kid. Don't think I won't come after you. I paused at the door and looked back at them one last time. I'm not scared of you, I said. And I'm not your son. Then I stepped out into the night, breathing in the cold air like it was the first time I'd ever tasted freedom. I didn't sleep that night. I packed my bag slowly, making sure I had everything I'd need to start over. My ID, a couple of shirts, my sketchbook filled with designs, and my dad's flight jacket. The letter went into the front pocket, close enough that I could feel it there, like a shield. The house was silent, too silent. I could hear Vincent's voice in my head, telling me I was making the biggest mistake of my life, telling me I'd be back when I realized the world didn't care about dreams. But I didn't believe him anymore. Before dawn, I walked to the school shop one last time. Mr. Gallagher was already there, unlocking the door with his usual calm focus. When he saw me standing there with my bag, he didn't ask questions. He just nodded. Got a place to go? He asked. Almost, I said, my voice rough from exhaustion. I just need a couple of days. He took out his phone and started dialing without hesitation. I know a guy, he said. Retired pilot. Lives out by the river. Good man. He and his wife have a spare room. They'd be happy to help someone like you. I didn't have words to thank him. I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak. By mid-morning, I was standing at the edge of town, waiting for the bus that would take me to the river. My phone buzzed with texts from Mom, some pleading, some angry. I read them all, then turned the phone off. I didn't need to hear those voices anymore. I told Mom before I left, you already chose. She didn't answer, just turned away. I think she was crying, but I didn't stay to find out. I didn't have the strength to see her crumble again. The retired pilot, Bill, met me at the stop in his old truck, waving like I was a long-lost nephew. His wife, Mary Ann, had baked fresh bread and set up the spare room with clean sheets and a little desk that looked like it had been waiting for me. Your minner said you're good with your hands, Bill said as he helped me carry my bag. Said you've got a good head on your shoulders. That's all we need to know. I nodded, feeling something in my chest loosen for the first time in weeks. Thank you. I said quietly. The next few days were a blur of small kindnesses. Bill showed me how to fix the squeaky back porch steps. Mary Ann pressed homemade soup into my hands like I was family. I worked on my scholarship applications in the evenings, sitting at that little desk by the window, feeling like maybe I hadn't lost everything after all. Of course, Vincent didn't let it go. His threats started coming through text, nasty little barbs about how he'd ruin me, how I'd be crawling back. I didn't even read them. I forwarded everything to the lawyer Dad's old friend had recommended when I was younger. The lawyer sent back a message, calm and direct, "We'll handle it. You focus on your future." I did. I started sketching again, for real this time. No more scribbles to hide from Trevor. No more half-finished designs buried under stacks of junk. In that quiet room by the river, I let myself dream again. I also started preparing for the move to the city. The aerospace firm had given me a start date a few weeks out, just enough time to breathe and gather my courage. Bill showed me a shortcut through the woods to the bus stop. Mary Ann taught me how to cook eggs that didn't taste like rubber. Little things, but they felt like the foundation for a life that was finally mine. The night before I was set to leave for the city, I sat on the back porch and watched the sunset behind the river. I thought about everything I was leaving behind: Dad's garage, Mom's laughter, even the sick feeling of dread that had been my constant companion for so long. It felt like shedding an old skin. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I knew there would be nights when the weight of everything I'd lost would come crashing back. But for the first time since Dad died, I felt like I was standing on my own 2 feet. I felt like I was ready. The first day of my apprenticeship felt like stepping into another world. The aerospace firm was everything I'd imagined and more: gleaming floors, the soft hum of machinery, and a workshop that smelled like fresh oil and new possibilities. My team leader, Greg, was a veteran engineer with silver hair and a steady voice that reminded me a little of Dad. He shook my hand and said, "Welcome aboard, Tyler. Let's see what you can do." It wasn't easy. The first few weeks were long days and longer nights, learning new systems and processes that made the high school shop feel like child's play. But every time I hit a wall, I remembered what Dad used to say: if you can build it small, you can build it big. So I kept building. At lunch, I found myself drawn to a girl on the team named April. She was a couple years older, with quiet eyes and a wry smile that caught me off guard the first time I made her laugh. One day, she caught me staring at a complicated CAD file on my computer and said, "You look like you're about to fight that thing." I laughed. It was the first time in a long time that it felt easy. We started talking more during breaks about engine designs and flight paths and the best sandwich spot near the office. One night, after work, she asked if I wanted to grab coffee. I said yes. And sitting across from her in that little diner, I realized how much I'd been holding back, how long it had been since I'd let someone see me without my guard up. The project I was assigned to was a small prototype aircraft, a sleek, experimental design that required every bit of skill I'd learned. I spent hours tweaking the blueprints, testing each piece until it felt right. Greg noticed. One afternoon, he pulled me aside, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You've got a real gift," he said. "I want you to stick around after this apprenticeship. We could use someone like you." I nodded, my heart pounding. "Thank you, sir," I said. My voice was steady, but inside, I was reeling. It felt like all the pieces were finally falling into place. Back at the house by the river, Bill and Mary Ann were like the family I'd never known I needed. Mary Ann would ask about my day over dinner, her questions gentle and kind. Bill would lean back in his chair, eyes twinkling. "Sounds like you're making waves, kid," he'd say. I'd just smile and nod, trying to let myself believe it was true. One evening, as I was packing up my notes, my phone buzzed with a message from a classmate back home. "Did you hear? Vincent's whole chain folded. Trevor's working at the mall, selling massage chairs. Thought you'd want to know." I read the message twice, feeling something cold and final in my chest. I didn't respond. I didn't even really feel anything, just a quiet relief, like the last thread tying me to that mess had finally snapped. A couple of weeks later, my mom's name popped up on my phone. A cryptic message: "We should talk. It's important." I stared at it for a long time, unsure what to feel. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to stay in this new life where no one could drag me back down. But another part of me, the part Dad had shaped, knew I couldn't run forever. I didn't answer right away. I needed time to think, to figure out what I wanted to say to her. But I knew I'd see her soon. For now, though, I had the future in my hands, a future I'd built piece by piece, exactly how Dad had taught me. I agreed to meet her a few days later. She asked me to choose the place, so I picked a little cafe I'd found near my apartment, one with old airplane parts hanging from the walls and propeller blades turned into ceiling fans. It felt safe, like a piece of the world Dad and I had loved. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked older than I remembered, her hair streaked with gray and her shoulders hunched like she'd been carrying the weight of everything for too long. She spotted me right away, her eyes flickering with relief and something else, maybe fear. "Hi, Ty," she said, her voice quiet. I nodded, motioning for her to sit across from me. We didn't say anything for a moment. The clink of cups and the low hum of conversation filled the space between us. Finally, she spoke. "I know you probably don't want to hear it, but I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "About everything. About how I let Vincent, how I let him take over, how I didn't stand up for you." I stared at her, my hands wrapped around the warm mug. "Why now?" I asked. My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding. She let out a shaky breath. "Because I'm tired," she said. "Tired of pretending. Tired of feeling like I failed you. And because I found something." She reached into her purse and pulled out a yellowed envelope. "It's a letter from your father to me. I think you should read it." My fingers trembled as I took it. Dad's handwriting jumped out at me, as familiar as my own. I opened it slowly, like I was peeling back a layer of the past I hadn't been ready to face. In it, Dad wrote about how much he loved us, both of us. He asked Mom to protect me, to make sure I had the chance to follow my dreams. "Tyler's going to do great things," he'd written. "Don't let anyone take that from him." I looked up at her, my throat tight. "You knew," I said, my voice a whisper. "You knew what he wanted." She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I did," she said, "and I was too scared to fight for it. Vincent, he was good at making me believe that we couldn't make it without him, that you were just a kid, and he was the only one who understood how to survive." I let myself believe it because it was easier than admitting I was wrong. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The anger I'd carried for so long felt like it was burning away, leaving something raw and uncertain behind. "Do you still love him?" I asked quietly. She shook her head. "No, he was just a shadow I let in to fill the empty spaces. But I see now. I see that he was never really family. Not like you and me." I let out a slow breath, feeling like I was exhaling years of bitterness. "What happens now?" I asked. She wiped her eyes and tried to smile. "I don't know," she said. "I've been living in a motel, trying to figure out what comes next. But I don't want to keep living in the past. I want to find a way to be part of your life again, if you'll let me." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman who used to stay up late proofreading my essays. The woman who'd always laughed at Dad's corny aviation jokes even if she didn't understand them. She looked so small sitting there, but for the first time in years, she also looked honest. I reached out and took her hand. "I don't know if I'm ready to forgive everything," I said, "but I don't want to keep carrying this anger around, either. If you're willing to start over, so am I." Her shoulders shook as she let out a sob. "Thank you," she whispered. I squeezed her hand, feeling something shift between us. "I'm moving into a new place soon," I said. "There's a spare room if you want it." She nodded, wiping her tears. "I'd like that," she said. "I'd like that very much." We sat there for a while longer, talking about small things, old movies we used to watch, Dad's favorite model planes. For the first time, the silence between us didn't feel like a wall. It felt like a bridge. I knew there would still be hard days, but I also knew that for the first time in a long time, we were finally standing on the same side. When Mom moved into my apartment, it felt like we were both stepping into a future we'd never expected. She brought her boxes of old books and framed photos, and I carried in my dad's flight jacket and my apprenticeship letter. We didn't say it out loud, but we both knew this was a chance to build something real, something that wasn't tied to old regrets. She started working part-time at a nearby elementary school, helping out in the library. She said it was just a job to get her out of the house, but I could tell she liked it. Some nights, she'd come home and tell me stories about the kids, how they'd ask her about planes or tell her about the birds they saw on their walk to school. She always ended those stories with a quiet smile, like she was remembering what it felt like to be needed for something good. At night, we'd sit in the living room, the walls still a little bare, and talk about the days when the world felt simpler. I'd tell her about the hangar and how Greg was trusting me with bigger projects, how he'd said I was a natural with engines. She'd listen, her eyes bright with pride I hadn't seen in years. "Your dad would have loved to hear that," she said one night, her voice soft. "I know," I said, and for the first time, I didn't feel that old ache in my chest, just a quiet warmth. We hung Dad's photo on the wall, right next to my apprenticeship offer letter. Some nights, I'd find Mom standing there, tracing the edges of the frames with her fingers like she was reminding herself this was real. And every time I saw it, I felt a little more sure that I was exactly where I was meant to be. On the weekends, we dug out the old model kits Dad and I had never finished. Mom would hold the tiny pieces in her hands, her brow furrowed as she tried to fit them together. "I don't know how you make this look easy," she'd say, laughing. "It's not," I'd tell her, and then I'd show her how to line up the pieces just right. It was slow work, but there was something healing in it, like we were fixing more than just plastic wings. We'd sit on the balcony sometimes, the city lights spread out below us. I'd look at the stars and think about Dad, about the promise I'd made to him. And I'd think about Mom sitting next to me, her shoulders a little less tense than they used to be. "Not everything stays broken," I said to her one night. "Some things can take flight again." She turned to me, her smile tired but real. "I'm starting to believe that," she said. As for Vincent and Trevor, I heard they'd ended up in Nevada, selling shady e-courses to anyone who'd listen. I didn't waste any more time thinking about them. They were just another chapter I'd already finished. In that small apartment, with the smell of coffee and the sound of model planes being built again, we started to make something new. We weren't just mother and son anymore. We were two people learning how to trust each other, how to find joy in the small things. And in the quiet moments, with Dad's photo watching over us, I knew we were going to be okay. Because in the end, we'd found our way back to the one thing that mattered most, family. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were both finally ready to fly.